Welcome to a new year of extra time.
There you go. You just took the intro. I'm giving that to you. Welcome to a whole new year extra time. We're here. We got our Christmas gifts and our swag. We are excited to bring you guys a whole nother year of content. Talking about the Women's World Cup that's coming up, talking about the U20 World Cup that's coming up, U.S. soccer news and not news and drama and player safety in sports and highlights and all those good things. We are so glad that you guys are tuning in. If you haven't hit that like button and that subscribe button, please do it. It helps us grow the channel. It helps us get connected. And honestly, you can hit subscribe and you can just turn the notifications off. You never have to find out when we post a video. It doesn't matter. It helps us grow the channel. So go ahead and do that while the intro is playing because we are diving into extra time. We finally nailed that intro. I appreciate you taking my back on that one because I was not going to be able to figure it out. How was everything? You enjoy your new year? You enjoy your holiday season?
It's been wonderful. Yeah, lots of time with family, lots of good time, just spending time together. It's been wonderful. How about you?
Yeah, I had a blast. So I don't know what the weather was like for you, but Christmas weekend it was -28 with the wind chill here. The wind was so strong that out on Lake Erie and Port Clinton, there were 79-mile-an-hour gusts. That was the max that they got up to, right? It was the same in Buffalo, New York. The water, I'm going to get the number wrong. The wind pushed the water out on the lake and dropped sea level there by like 7 feet.
Wow.
So Buffalo got bashed because that's all the water moved across the side, and people actually walked out into Lake Erie and took pictures. You can Google all this. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description of the land masses, like the sandbars, but from like down underneath them, and they look like islands that were on like the Magic the Gathering cards from Zendikar, like floating islands. It was insane. It was incredible.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the only time my dog wanted to go outside. So I was in like 5 layers. You could see about this much of my face because I had my hat pulled down. I had like my jacket buttoned up to like here. It was wild. But outside of that, it was great. And we sat around, played some board games, watched some football. New Year's rolls around, watched some more football. Lots of the wrong kind of football. But you know what? The World Cup's over, so I didn't have much of a choice.
Sometimes it's the right kind of football.
Right. Sometimes it's the right kind of football. So before we go into this, I got a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you open
Okay.
Did you open any gifts where your first thought was, I'm never going to use this?
Um,
You don't have to say what
no,
it was. You don't have to
actually,
say what it was.
no, I didn't. There were definitely a few that it was like, I don't really want this, but is something I can use and may use at some point. I don't
Okay.
think there were any that it was like flat out, no, I'm never going to use this.
Okay. I had a couple, but
About you?
I had a couple. I'm gonna save myself though. I don't even want to hint at what they were. I
Uh-huh.
will say one. I will say one of these because my wife already knows. So she went and she bought herself a pair of shoes. She went to the Vans store and she bought me a pair of shoes. She knows I like Vans and I wear Vans all the time. And she goes, before I open it, I hope you really like these. And I open the box, and I do not have a poker face at all, right? So like I open the box, and I like looked at her, and she's like, "Ugh, you hate them." And I could feel myself being like, just tell her the truth. Just say yes. Like you're never gonna wear these, and you should just return. She's like, we could return them, and I was like, no, say the right thing. I was like, oh, I don't know. I've never worn them. Like I don't know if I like them or not. And like I couldn't fake it because the whole time she was just like, ah, you hate them. And I was like, babe, like look at all the other stuff you got me. I love all the other stuff you got me, right? Like she got me this. This is sweet. I'm rocking that. I love this. This is like one of the replica ones. I have another replica one. A bunch of like I got sweet stuff. It was just she was so fixated on this one pair of shoes that I'm probably never gonna wear and might get returned. But so that was my one thing. I had a couple of stuff because your parents, mom's always getting you stuff that you're just like, great, and they're like, at first I thought of you the moment I saw it.
Yes.
Yep. And I mean, it was always like you said. Like I don't know if I want it, but like I'll.
It's the realities of gift
Right.
giving,
That's
you
right.
know.
I'm trying to like.
Sometimes you're the one who gives that gift and you just have to roll with it.
Right. Yes. Right. Sometimes you give it and you just they fake the reaction better than you do. But yeah. All right. So the first thing we're going to touch on, and I literally mean touch on this, because this is not worth us talking about. I'm literally just doing this because we're U.S. Soccer and we need to talk about it. If you've been following, U.S. Soccer released a statement. Their statement is kind of convoluted and strange, and I will basically just explain to you why it's convoluted and strange so that we don't have to talk about this again. We will talk about something else in a line with it, but we're not going to talk about this thing. So, Greg Berhalter is being investigated. Well, not really. What's happened is somebody is trying to blackmail Greg Berhalter for something that Greg admitted he did in, was it 1991? I think
91.
91.
31 years ago.
So 31 years ago, Greg and his wife were at a bar, and I need everybody to know it's his current wife. Okay, if that leads you to how serious the situation must have been, it's still his current wife, and he got upset in something and he kicked her. Then that's it. That's it. I'm not saying it's okay to kick somebody, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying any of those things. That's what happened, right? Just facts. He got upset. He was at a bar. He kicked her. He has come out and made this statement. He did the stereotypical, apologize for it. Guess what? He probably apologized sometime in the last 31 years because he's still married to her. U.S. Soccer is
I'm
not
sure they have worked it out together.
100%. There's no way they haven't worked it out. They're still married. U.S. Soccer is not investigating Greg Berhalter. U.S. Soccer is investigating an individual who contacted Greg and said, I'm going to make this information public unless you something, right? We don't really know what that person had said, but basically they tried to blackmail Greg. Greg and the other staff members at U.S. Soccer made the Soccer Federation aware of it, and the Federation immediately hired this thing, right? It's not worth talking about that part of it, right? But it is worth talking about something else that is apparent in sports and political culture and all of those other things, which is we find ourselves as human beings really wanting to go down that road of somebody's past and be like, you did this bad thing a long time ago, so you must still be a bad person now.
Yeah.
Right? And
It's defining people by the mistakes they made
right.
is for some reason, it is a trend in our current culture of, yeah, like you said, you've made these mistakes. You must still be a terrible person deep down on the inside. There's no way you've changed.
Right.
There's no way you can tell me you're actually sorry for what you did 25, in cases of some of the politicians, like 50 something years ago.
Right. And it's frustrating to me because, one, if we're putting anybody in some kind of a spotlight, we should be looking at their character, right? And you and I have talked about this before. Like, who are you as a person? What are you bringing to the table? And a lot of that is what you're currently doing. Now, some people make those things where like, oh, well, if 25 years ago they stood for X, how do we know they're really like not still standing for it? It's like, well, you just look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like if 25 years ago they believed that like the moon was flat and 5 years ago they're still talking about the moon being flat, sure, right? But like if 25 years ago they were some hippie drug person in college and now they're like they have 2 master's degrees and they have a PhD and they're like, you know what I'm saying? Like I would not want to be the person who
Yes,
like somebody
absolutely.
looked at. Yeah.
I mean, well, yeah, we all have mistakes in our past. We all have things that we did, when we were angry or, when we were young and immature and didn't know better. And we've done stupid things. And those things probably hurt somebody along the way. And hopefully, if we're blessed, we get the chance to apologize to that person. But if not, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just live my entire life feeling like that one mistake has, ruined me in some way? Or do I learn from it, grow, become a better person, do better next time?
Right. 100%. I mean, you and I have had this conversation before. We mistake forgiveness with consequences, right? And we believe in society that if I forgive you, then you just got off. You're off the hook, right? You get it. And it's like, no, there's still a consequence for what you did. And if we look at this case, Greg's consequence happened 31 years ago, right? Like it's done. It's over, right? Like Greg is not still this person. It's not like
Yes, I'm sure there
he
was some
didn't,
hard times with his wife back.
right. And like, I'm not saying that it's okay to do any of this stuff, right? And that's why we're not talking. I'm not going down that road because that's not what we're talking about, right? I need everybody to listen and stay focused. We are just talking about they dealt with it, right? They worked it out. This is 31 years ago, right? If this had been U.S. Soccer's investigating because Greg did this thing and other staff members have said that Greg's been aggressive and violent towards them, then you can go, his past is still in his current character, right? But like, it's not. It wasn't his ex-wife. It wasn't a girlfriend. It wasn't it's his current wife. They know about it, right? Like, so, I don't know. I just thought the thing was ridiculous. And No, you go, yeah.
The fact that he openly went to the U.S. Federation about it, like when he got contacted, tells you that they are over
Right. 100%.
it. He's not worried about making it public because they've moved past it. They've worked it out. Good.
Right. We don't need to worry about it. And he's comfortable saying, hey, like, I am being blackmailed. This is the thing that I did. And this is what we have to do about it. And it's also just like weird. It's like a weird, I don't know. I don't like the timing for lots of things. It's a weird timing for it. And like, this person's probably trying to piggyback off the Giovanni Reina thing. I don't know. And like, whatever their intentions were,
Probably.
that individual doesn't deserve to get any of that. So that being said, that's just, if you guys are following and you've heard about it and you're not sure and you just don't want to look into it, there's all you have to know. So first real topic, okay, that I want to talk about football and not our kind of football, right? American football, which I guess is our kind of football. So over the weekend, there were 2 college football semifinal playoffs, okay? And Chris, I know you didn't get to watch either one of them, but I want to tie this into soccer, okay? And some of the things that we experienced in the World Cup with VAR and refereeing consistency and all that stuff. So we had multiple plays that were reviewed in whether it was, I'm going to go with, there was one with the touchdown, but I don't want to focus on the touchdown. So at the very end of the Michigan game, Michigan played like trash. They deserve to lose. And it's the final play, and they botched the final play. And as the guy's going down, right, he's got the ball, he's falling backwards, right? And a guy from TCU drops his helmet and hits him in the back of the head. Like, comes right up through the back of his head and up over the top and knocks the guy's helmet forward. And it's obviously targeting. Like, there's no way it's not. And, like,
yeah. It's like the clear definition of it.
Right, clear definition of targeting. They go to a commercial because the game is now over, right? So they're just like, right? The commercial, they come back, and the commentators are like, oh, that last play was reviewed for targeting, but it was deemed not targeting. Okay, so we're going to remember that's example 1. In the Ohio State game, Harrison, like probably the best wide receiver in the country right now in college football, is defenseless in the end zone, and as he goes to catch a ball, a guy just creams him, right? And in full speed, live action, it's targeting, right? Guy drops his helmet, lifts up his shoulder, and he connects with him somewhere up in here. And he goes down to the ground. He winds up getting hurt. He doesn't play for the rest of the game because he does something to his shoulder. And they throw the flag, and it's targeting. Same thing. Go to a commercial. Come back from the commercial. The commentators are like, oh, that play was under review, and they've removed the foul. It's not targeting. And then they show you, like, super slow motion. And the guy, like, connects his shoulder to his shoulder pad. And because he doesn't really hit him in the head, and he's not really defenseless, they lift the flag. Now, the reason I bring those two things up is because FIFA also has a problem that could be fixed. Okay? So the problem that I brought up in college football is player safety, right? We want to stop guys from targeting. We want to keep our players healthy, right? We know about the concussion stuff that's happened over the last 10 years. We know it's a problem. We got all these new rules. We're trying to help out players. FIFA is trying to do the same thing with embellishing and player safety, right? Players embellishing, not kicking the ball away, all that other stuff. Okay? We've talked about a ton of these things a lot. My opinion, and I'll pass it over to you, is this stuff's not going to go away unless there's consistency and the refereeing is more strict than it is lenient. So if I'm the referees of the College Football Association, right, and I see anybody even attempt to throw a hit that's targeting, it's getting a flag. Because over time, players will have to adapt to that rule and they will have to learn how to throw better, safer tackles, right? If I'm in FIFA, I need to start enforcing things that should be yellow card offenses, right? Over the weekend in a Premier League game, there was a free kick, and I don't remember what team it was on, but a player wasn't 10 yards away from the ball, right? Now, we learned in high school and college, if you intentionally don't stand 10 yards away, it should be a yellow card. Does it happen? No, right? But the guy asks for 10 yards, and the referee is all the way in the penalty box. And the referee doesn't walk over and measure the 10 yards. He jogs over and he yellow cards the guy. And the commentators are like, that's a joke. Why you can't do that because he doesn't know where 10 yards is because you haven't marked it for it, right? But that was a really good example of you need to at least give me an honest effort, right? Like it's in the rules. Do you think these examples that I've given you, do you think that's the best solution to fix these systemic problems in refereeing? And you can use completely separate examples, or you can talk about the football one separate if you think there's a better solution. And if not, how would you like to see each one get resolved?
Um, I'll talk about the soccer ones specifically. I do think when it comes to things like time wasting, Jordan Pickford is obnoxious when it comes to time on the ball. Like every time he catches the ball, he holds it for like 15 seconds. It's
Mm-hmm.
awful. You can see you can see the players on the other team like motioning to the ref like, "Come on." Cuz he does. He makes a huge deal of it. It's obnoxious. Um then, you have guys picking up the ball on throw-ins, let me pick up the ball, walk away with it a few yards, drop it down the line or something.
Right, go to
Um
throw it, have my
I think
teammates
for
say
those
no, it's
types of
mine. Yeah.
things, yeah, like I think for those types of things when it comes to ed ball, like player conduct that influences the spirit of the game, I guess I'll say. Those things the referee in game can be on top of. Um, those are the things that it's easy to see. Like, hey, that is a yellow cardable offense. They say like they don't give it to him because everybody does it. Well, if you start giving it to them, then people won't do it anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at, right? Like how do we stop those
Yeah,
problems where
I think
common has become the norm even though it's not normal? This isn't how the game's supposed to work.
yeah, I think there's a difference when it comes to things like embellishment or hard tackles, those kinds of things. Like it's so hard to see sometimes, and I mean I give a lot of the refs, not all of them, but most of the refs at the World Cup and in the Premier League, I give them a lot of credit because they do actually a really good job. What I have seen of like seeing in real time what actually happened. You go back on the replay and watch it, like wow, they actually did a good job of catching that. Um, but there's obviously still a lot that they miss too, and so I wouldn't put pressure really on them to go too hard like into punishing the embellishment or go too hard on like drawing lines on hard tackles and stuff. I think, and I've thought this for a lot, should be some type of video review committee that goes back like in the Premier League, views every single game, every single week, finds the instances of like that was an illegal tackle or that was like a tackle that endangered that player, or that was embellishment, and they need to keep track of it. And I don't know what the number should be. There's a number when any player, dives, let's say, or they get to this number of like studs up tackles, get
Right.
suspended for a game or 2 games or whatever. I know they have review process, but it's only like the team has to lodge a complaint, get the review process started. That's a lot of time that and effort that teams don't want to put in. It doesn't, ultimately it's not effective.
Right. And if it doesn't lead to anything, like why would you have your staff waste the
But
time?
if they were at keeping track of these things,
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. But if they have a committee that is watching and keeping track of these things, I just think it would be so much easier to root out, especially embellishment in the diving. Like, all know it's such a stupid thing.
Hmm.
We talked about it during the World Cup. Like, there was the one play in the Netherlands, I think, where like if he had gone down, he'd have gotten the call. But he didn't, and they let it play on.
Yeah.
They didn't
Yep.
give the yellow card.
Yep.
And
We had
so
talked about that. Like
we talked about that.
it's just
Like,
ridiculous.
so there needs to be, in my opinion, there should be each level of competition, Champions League, Premier League. I don't care if it's one guy or 2 guys or 3 guys, whatever. Go through every game every week, keep track of who's committing what violations. When they reach the number, that player is suspended a game. Guess what? They'll figure it out. They'll stop
Right.
doing it.
And I agree. That's what I think. And I guess the reason that I brought in the college football one is that it's a much clearer foul that exhibits like player safety, right? There's very few
Yeah.
times there are times in soccer and in the World Cup and stuff where like there were moments where we're like, whoa, right? We reference like the last World Cup when the guy like drop kicked somebody in the chest, right? And like video review was like, and we just kind of like eye rolled it, like how on earth is that not a red card? And before I touch base on the stuff you just said, because I agree with you, it if you had a video review team, right, that looked at, I guess not even a video review team, if your flags were consistently more like if it might have been it's going to be a flag, you deter players from thinking this thought: I'm going to take a chance that I get away with it, right? Because if it's really
True.
about player safety,
That's absolutely true.
right? If it's really about player safety, you can't have the guys on your field thinking, I might get away with this, right? Because if video review goes back and they go, well, he didn't really lead with his helmet and he didn't really make contact with the head first. He didn't. If you're going to get to that much of a detail, how much do you really care about player safety, right? If you're sitting there, because even if it's an accident, you're like, I
It's
don't care.
true.
I don't care if
Yeah,
it's an
if they're
accident,
really
right?
trying to make it about that,
Right. You'd have to
if
take
they're
those.
really trying to make it about player safety, it should be a harder line.
Right. And it should be more one that should be like overly strict. Because then you're really deterring players from being like, when I throw this hit, I'm not even going to chance it. Like I'm going to be overly cautious that the way I throw this hit could not in any way, shape, or form be reviewed as targeting. Right. I'm just going to throw it a normal tackle. And so, touching base on what
Yeah,
you're saying.
unfortunately, and I saw this just about football, American football. I saw this. As you can see, I'm a Giants fan. I watched the Giants game this past weekend. They had a linebacker win on the quarterback, and the quarterback pumped as the guy hit him, and he didn't want to get the flag for driving him to the ground or whatever it is. Threw it when he pumped. So the linebacker like stopped and got off of him and was like looking for where the ball went, but it was still in the quarterback's hand. And that's a case where it's like, at fortunately, it was an incomplete pass and it didn't actually affect the game. That could have been a huge play in that game, if he gets back up and makes a great throw and they get a long, a big play out of it. That's where it's hard. Like, there is a big difference now between back to the ground as far as player safety versus helmet to helmet contact. Like, there's a huge difference between those two.
Right.
And if you want to
100%.
be a harder line on the helmet to helmet, versus,
Hmm.
that other one. I get that. So maybe they just need to really figure out their priorities of which one they're going to be hard on.
Right. And, trying to analyze both of these through the lens of like, I'm not trying to look at these specific situations, right? I want to back up and figure out like what is the bigger issue that could be resolved, right? Like the rule is the problem, right? In the scenario that you just said, it was a player trying to make a split-second decision on the field to act in the best case for his team and in the other player, knowing that if this guy releases this ball and I smash him, it's basically like he completed the pass anyway, because I'm going to be giving him a first down and getting yardage. And so where is that middle ground, right? And FIFA doesn't, soccer doesn't have a good middle ground right now. Like the middle ground is I'm going to embellish and dive, because if I don't, the referee's not going to call it, and so there's no middle ground. There's either this extreme simulation or there's like leg breaking challenges. There's no middle ground. And I'm not expecting anything to be perfect, but to touch base on what you had said before about the committee, we all remember Zinedine Zidane's headbutt, right? The controversy behind that wasn't necessarily that he did it. It was that was the first time that a referee had handed out a penalty to something he didn't see.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it had happened, and so for anybody who doesn't know this,
they didn't even have VAR.
Right? They didn't.
It was
They
just
didn't have VAR.
played on the big board.
Correct. So for anybody who doesn't know this, I'm going to try to put a card in here and put a link in the description for you so that you see it. Zidane headbutted a player from Italy, right? The referee had his back to the play, right? Because the ball had gotten cleared up the field. Zinedine still in his offensive whatever. And what happens?
Player apparently said something terrible about his mother.
He did.
If you want the justification.
Yes, a player said something horrifying about his mom. He headbutt. I mean, he hit him pretty hard. He didn't hit him super hard, but he hit him. And the referee who had his back to the play happened to see it on the Jumbotron because one of the cameramen had caught it on film and they played it as a replay.
Yeah.
And when the referee saw it, the referee went over and handed him a red card. The controversy that came from the team wasn't that Zinedine had done something wrong or not wrong. They weren't mad about that. They were mad that a referee was handing out a card for something that he didn't witness, which wasn't really in the rules, right?
Yeah, none of the linesmen had either.
Right. Nobody saw it. And so is the referee allowed to do this? Because in other, what happens in college games that don't have that kind of camera service? Like, that's not fair to them. And so, to me, we brought in video-assisted refereeing to avoid these moments, right? To have a group of people that could do two things. One, objectively look at the ball being in bounds, the ball being out of bounds, offsides, all that stuff.
Goal.
The goals, yep. But also to have a group of people who could look at things afterwards and make sure that players that were intentionally trying to hurt other players could be penalized for it.
Absolutely.
And then I just, until we see more, you don't even need to change the rules. The rules are in place. We just need to be more consistent with them if it really is about maintaining the integrity of the game and player safety and all of those things. And this is in, it's across a wide variety of sports.
We love you. We love you.